So I think I know most of you in the room here, and I've seen a lot of you at Big C events. I've done presentations like a lot of educational training at Big C events, continually trying to drive home the message of educating people on rack PDU, but also driving the message that lines up with our product features, right? So I'm a big supporter of teach people what we do, right, and show them the value of what we do, so we're not stuck selling commodity products. So kind of keep that in mind as I'm presenting today. Something also I want to get off my chest before we get started is I love Datacom. I love Datacom. When we first got our Datacom reps through the Beeline acquisition, I think before the deal even closed, I had called every single rep and said, "Hey, I'm so excited. Will you sell PDU for me?" I recognized early on that driving the spec, which is something that reps are very good at, would be a big key to our success in growing our market share, which at the time was minuscule, and we had lofty goals of, unseating APC over time. So getting there quickly, I knew we had to drive a spec, drive high value products. So today I'm going to be talking about the whole message though, between the Triplite and Eaton products, and hopefully kind of drive a cohesive message of how it all fits together. So hopefully most of you are familiar with rack PDU. A lot of times I start with this slide as just kind of a level set. Rack PDU is the last link in the power chain, right? So when you think about data cabling, think about power cabling, equally important. Without power, nothing works. It's your best monitoring control point, and it's going to be plugged in generally to a UPS, to an overhead busway, or underfloor power. So that's kind of where our product sits in the whole grand scheme of things. So the Triplite opportunity, and I will call it an opportunity. It's kind of the perfect marriage, if you want to call it that, from a PDU perspective, I can say. So just to kind of start here, the green peaks there that are being circled are Triplite. So these are products by category. Let me start with that. Products by category: basic, metered, monitor, metered outlet switch, switched outlet metering. So kind of going up in technology from left to right. And then a split between 3P, which is three-phase, 1P, which is single-phase, and then Eaton and Triplite. So this kind of paints a picture of how the revenue split was coming into the acquisition and how our pieces fit together. And it's kind of interesting when you look at each of the categories, you can see where Triplite's higher, Eaton is lower. Where Eaton's lower, Triplite is higher. So we had a very complementary product offering. And probably not a huge surprise to people when you look at basic meter and local meter without network connectivity and switch. That's where Triplite had stronger sales. And Eaton was heavier weighted towards the monitored and the managed PDU in particular. We have very strong sales there. So this really represents, here's kind of some numbers behind it. So it really represents where we play. So Triplite was more in the single phase, lower power, under 5 kVA, a lot of rack mount SKUs on the Triplite side. And then on the Eaton side, more 3-phase, more higher power PDUs, so more of a data center play. So network closet versus data center, kind of project-based versus more transactional. So really the integration work for this product line was pretty much done when we acquired it, because there's not much going on here, right? Not a lot of crisscross. So we're really thankful for that. So here's another way to kind of look at the way I first used this slide many years ago when we were formulating our Eaton approach at going after the PDU business. We chose that we wanted to be in the project side, which we call the elephant, right? Any of you heard the term hunting elephants? Kind of a common term for people who spec things in. So it can take a long time. It can be really hard to land one, but boy, when you get it, you got yourself an elephant, right? So it's worth the effort. Versus looking at a rabbit. Rabbits are really fast. There's a lot of them, but it's just a different kind of a faster paced kind of business. So I kind of view it as project being the elephant, transactional being like the rabbit. So Triplite kind of sat more on that side of things, and Eaton sat on the other side. So we kind of went after two different pieces of the PDU market, and these are just some kind of indicators that show you what the two markets look like. So in a project base, you're going to end up with generally larger size orders. Transactional, of course, you're going to have a lot more orders, but smaller orders. The sales cycle on projects is going to be longer. So I know some of you have worked with projects that could take 6 months until they come to fruition, and then they just kind of keep paying back like an annuity, right? Like you do all that work, and then you just keep getting that business. So versus transactional, Maybe somebody's trying to make a decision. They want to buy 5 of something, and they're going to make a decision today. What's in stock? They're just going to buy it. They're not going to do that in a, in a 1 megawatt data center. You don't wake up one morning and decide you're going to buy, buy a 1 megawatt UPS and 1,000 PDU. So it's just a different type of business. So I would say also categorized by the project business is less order quantity, but more dollars, so more higher average selling price versus more quantity in the transactional, but lower price. So in a project business, people value the specification. So when you're going after a project business, you need to really force that spec towards an Eaton spec, versus when you're going after a transactional opportunity, you need to find something that's value priced, that's in stock, ready to go, that meets their needs. So it's kind of a different way of looking at the sale. As far as the product types that we would see in these areas, in a project, more configured, higher feature set, probably managed, so more kind of higher technology, probably 3-phase, ties into December monitoring software. So versus on the transactional side, more the basic metered switched, single phase, surge projects, those types of things. And kind of as I alluded to, so you're talking 2 different types of sales, right? Project business is probably 80% by dollars, but transactional 80% by quantity. So you're selling a lot more boxes, but you're selling higher volume. Tons of logos up on the screen. So these are all actually Eaton customers who have purchased PDU at various times for various projects. And I kind of broke it out by markets or sub-markets, whatever you want to call it, just to kind of go through some typical applications where you can find PDU. So hopefully the first striking thing that you can see here when you look at this is that everybody buys PDU. They're used anywhere you're connecting any device, right? So it's kind of an unlimited opportunity. It's more a matter not of who's going to buy it, but picking the right people to go after and the right projects to go after. So just kind of starting up in the upper left there, crypto mining, this is an area Eaton's dabbling on and off. We have a couple of larger customers, one large customer, one emerging customer looking at this space. These are generally basic PDU with very high power. We're looking to expand our offering in this space. So today we don't have a lot of focus on crypto, but that's something we're looking to expand in the coming months. Cloud and hyperscale. This is a tough one because you're hunting a really big elephant in a case like that, right? So just keep in mind though that when you talk cloud and hyperscale, there's different bits to this. So even when you get inside, like I'll use Microsoft for an example, they'll have their cloud data centers. They'll have their data centers that support Microsoft, that support different services. They have data centers that support their lab environment, which is one of the things down below where they test server devices. They also have endpoint network locations all over the place. So there could be different pieces within there. So it's not that there's just one person buying PDU or racks or anything within these companies. There's different groups that are responsible for different pieces of it. So there's definitely places you might be able to play if you have those people in your area. Co-location data centers. I listed a couple that we work with today. There's obviously a whole bunch of other ones, some smaller regional players. Co-location data centers are very important to our business, partly because we see a lot of our enterprise customers kind of creeping into co-location over the last years here. There's definitely a trend there. So it's a space that we want to pay attention to and we want to be active in. In co-location, we see people buy PDUs a couple of different ways. Sometimes the co-location data center says you have to use our PDU, and other times they give the customer the choice of bringing their own PDU. So sometimes you're driving the spec of the end user and it goes into a colo. That's very common today. And other times you're just working with a colo and they're specifying it. So you have to understand how your colo kind of works projects. Financial industry, kind of a wide, kind of broadly talking financial to include a lot of different areas. This is a huge area, a huge opportunity for us, a lot of dollars in this space. And we have a lot of really big name customers who buy a lot of expensive PDUs. So that's an area, if you have anybody in insurance or anything financial related, those are all great targets to talk with them about what they're doing in their data centers. A lot of them are deploying high-end managed products. Those kind of our most expensive products are going into those types of applications. Test lab, this is probably a really good one for the West Coast in particular, where you have a lot of these big technology companies that, like Cisco, who when they deploy their switches, they have huge test labs where they test every possible configuration. and they're power cycling stuff, and they're just running things through different, different lab type tests. So it's a lab, but it's hundreds of PDU and hundreds of racks in the lab because of the scale they operate at. Something that's been a growth area the last couple of years is autonomous vehicle technology and automation. So autonomous vehicle, in that companies like Ford, Tesla, BMW are investing greatly in their data centers to have their back-end technology to support all these smart cars that are going around and are going to be reporting data back to this data center. So Tesla kind of started the charge with this, where they're collecting data from all these cars, and every manufacturer is going this direction, where they're going to have their fleet of vehicles reporting back information about self-driving stats, map data, and they collect all this data, and the data is then used to make their cars better. And hopefully, the goal, right, with everybody is eventually the cars drive themselves. So this is, I would call this a very fresh and emerging area. The spend in this area has only just begun, and the data centers, the back-end technology required is huge. So that's a huge opportunity. If you have any automotive company in your backyard, it's worth having a discussion with them about what they're doing. Something that's been consistent for us has been federal business. So we have a couple of our product lines that are TAA compliant, or even some BAA compliant products, which is a requirement when you're dealing with any federal project. All the different security agencies buy our PDUs for their super secret data centers. But it could also be other applications, the Postal Service or the FAA or something. They're buying PDUs and UPSs. So those are good opportunities where, again, you can get something spec'd in and rolled out across pretty large areas. Healthcare, any healthcare chain, between data centers or like locations throughout their campuses, lots of technology that's there. Great discussion earlier about the charge cards with, that Craig had with the devices. All those devices, though, keep in mind, those devices connect up to a network, right? So there's a lot of back-end infrastructure to support that too. And telecom, which is obviously a kind of tried and true industry, and education. So on the, I know Triplite's really big in education as far as products for like actual education locations, where a lot of times on the Eaton side, we were more successful with PDU, at least in the big data centers. So when they're building like a mega data center for research or other things, Michigan State's on here, Dakota State University, big data centers that they built out and they standardized on our PDU. So it's always important to ask, when you talk about any product, why do they matter? I'm going to make the argument that my PDU products are the most important product you're going to learn about during your trip here. That's a really tall claim, but I just really strongly believe for this particular group of people who you're touching, you can see a lot of success with it. You can make a lot of money selling, and that's really the bottom line. They're complementary with the rack enclosure. So you walk in, you sell one of Craig's racks, you put 2 of my PDU in it, you put a whole bunch of connectivity stuff in it, you build the whole thing out, right? And it becomes a complementary sale. Another important thing is it's a defensive move. So some people maybe who are used to selling racks, well, okay, so you're in selling a rack, and then all of a sudden Legrand or Schneider puts a PDU in it, and what do you think they're going to do? They're going to come back and they're going to try to sell the rack to them next time. So the more you can keep the competition out of the account, the better. So the more you can sell of Eaton, of course, it's just to your advantage. Probably the most important thing is the revenue stream. So $600 would be like very low end for, say, 2 PDUs, 2 very, very basic PDUs. But it's very common with our high-end products to have a $5,000 PDU sale, a couple $2,500 PDUs. So how many of you, just out of curiosity, how many of you have sold a $2,500 PDU in your career? Okay, pretty good. Well, let's try to get more of you doing that. So our PDUs actually, on the high end, we have standard products that are as expensive as $3,500 when you get the super high power density. So there is a fair amount of spend that can occur there. Probably my big message today is going to be selling up the value chain. So if you're someone who's been selling more of the Triplite type products, there's an opportunity to sell up the value chain to higher end technologies. I put together this little comparison, which I actually confess that I went on Triplite's website and I used the find a partner link to get market pricing for this stuff. So just got to disclose that. So I don't know if it's accurate, but I think it pretty much, but so I kind of just went out, and to be fair, by the way, on the Eaton side, even though we don't have the link, I just Googled the part number and I found pricing. So it's not like, customers aren't dumb, right? They put part numbers in Google and they look for stuff. So I think that was a great point earlier, just be aware it's going to happen and be ready for it. So, but these prices are meant to be roughly market price for a comparable PDU. So this is an L2130 PDU, 8.6 kW, kind of what we would call the sweet spot for a data center. And this is a comparison between the different technologies, between the trip light and the Eaton PDU. And I literally just went out and did this without any preconceived anything. I stacked the technologies up in ascending order, went out and got the prices, and look what happened, right? So the prices just moved right up the chain. And interestingly, when you go from a basic to our flagship HD Managed, it's over 3 times the dollar selling price when you move up the chain. So that just underscores the whole idea of selling that higher value product. But what it also shows is you've got a lot of options now, right? So if someone says, well, I don't like the Managed, but I still need switching, you can move down to a trip light switch product. Or if they need some sort of current metering and the basic product isn't good enough, but maybe something network connected is overkill, you can just move them up to a local meter product. So you have a chance to get some incremental increase. So I think the challenge for all of you, and this kind of is something you'll learn by trial and error through experience, is figuring out where to place somebody in this kind of spectrum of pricing. So you have to know if you're going into an opportunity and it's going to be price, maybe you can get them to step up to a local meter or a monitor, but you're probably not going to get them all the way to the top. But I also on the same side of things, I would say when you're talking to people, talk from the right to the left. So walk in talking to them about a fully managed, fully featured product. Tell them that you think that's the best thing for them, and then listen to them. And if you walk back down the chain, walk back down the chain. But don't go with a preconceived notion that you're talking to someone who doesn't value those features without having that conversation first. Because I've seen too many times when an opportunity is left on the table because we make assumptions somebody's not going to want it. Or I've had salespeople look me in the face and say, nobody in the world would ever buy a $2,000 PDU. Nobody. And salespeople just argue with me about it. And it's all I can say is I have lots of salespeople who sell them all the time. So I don't know. So it's all a matter of how you approach it and understanding what the value is too, right? I'm not saying just sell something that's expensive. We have to understand why the value is there and why people are moving to it. So that's when I get the product. They'll hopefully kind of address that. So in the presentation, the rack PDU portfolio. So we're going to be talking through what a consolidated portfolio looks like. Just keep in mind that we are still doing some things with consolidating things. There will be some end of lives that are coming, some new products that are coming. But this will give you an idea of basically what the platform is going to look like going forward. First piece of this is understanding the technologies. So like any technology field, we have all sorts of acronyms, and PDU has more acronyms than any other business probably within Eaton. So every technology has a 2-letter acronym, or 3-letter, I guess. So when we talk about things, we talk about, and so kind of look at this chart from the top down as kind of ascending order, right? So basic PDU, and then you can see going over on the right-hand side there, it's showing what would be Eaton and Trip Light by Eaton type products that fall in that category, and then what the function is of that. And I say function on a very high level, so this chart kind of shows the high-level functionality. When we get in the weeds on that, there's a lot of sub-features in the network card and other things. This kind of just talks about, at the core, what does the PDU do? So I know Tony mentioned yesterday, not to look at this as the good, better, best. And I look at it more as a ascending feature set, right? So it's not that there's anything wrong with the basic PDU. If you need a basic PDU, we have the best basic PDU out there. But it's hard to argue that a managed PDU isn't better than a basic PDU as far as the value it provides to someone as far as remote management and things like that. So kind of view it that way. Obviously ascending price, so when you go from that basic to managed, the price is ascending. Basic PDU is going to be your basic distribution, so it's going to take a higher power input, break it out to a bunch of outlets. Pretty straightforward, easy to understand. Local meter just throws in that metering on top of that. And then when you get to metered or monitored at the input, you add that network connectivity and you can monitor at the section level. You get to metered outlet, and then you add the capability to meter down to the outlet level. So everything kind of builds on the previous. And then you get to switch, and actually you lose the meter capability, but you have all the switching capability, and then manage essentially marries together metered out and switched into the full function kind of offering. So one of the things we talk a lot about in PDU is how there's so much it can get kind of complex, right? So charts like this kind of help boil it down and kind of give you a little way to guide yourself through it. And then just on the bottom there, the two in green, automatic transfer switch. I'll talk through that, but that basically provides dual port redundancy, and then maintenance bypasses for servicing and replacing UPS. So basic PDU, this is going to be the Eaton Triplet series when all said and done. We've already end-of-lifed a whole bunch of Eaton basic SKUs. Eaton was honestly never super focused in this space, and we were happy to have the additional SKUs come on board with Triplet. This is a volume business, so you just have to sell a lot of boxes, highly available. Triplet has a great offering of horizontal and vertical models that cover a lot of different options, different physical sizes, different cable lengths, etc. This is really a low-cost distribution play for someone who just needs something to plug stuff in. Something interesting within this product category is the isobar PDUs. So they have surge suppression that's built in to the PDU. So that's something I think someone mentioned earlier. David was talking about Triplet selling a lot of power strips, right? And so this is the same technology in their surge strips that's been moved to a PDU. It's a great surge strip. I mentioned earlier CPI sells a lot of surge strips, and I know that was a gap with Eaton. We never had something to compete, so that gives you some other options there. Local meter, so this adds local metering, which could be a total meter, it could be a phase meter, just depends, but the point is it's just going to be a little LED display with a couple numbers on there. This is a great step up for basic, and I would almost argue for the price difference, there would be no reason to ever buy a basic PDU, because this gives you the capability to see how much capacity you have left in that PDU, so when you're plugging stuff in, you know if you're about to overload it or not. So pretty important capability. So it may be section-based or it could be phase-based, so depending on the model, they're different. So the Triplet portfolio has an option of a lot of different horizontal and vertical models, so pretty wide selection. So metered input, as Eaton called it, or monitored, as Triplet called it, kind of two different names for the same thing. It has your local current meter, but also has your network connectivity. So that's, again, a step up. And this category has the most models of any of the categories. I used to really call this the sweet spot for IT and data center type customers because we sold a lot of metered input monitored PDU. However, over the last 2 years through the pandemic, that's completely flipped, and now the switch to the managed has gotten a lot more popular, and that's just driven plain and simply by everything that happened during COVID, right? Travel limitations, remote work, all that kind of changed. Kind of a paradigm change in how people view their network, managing power in the network. So this is kind of what I would say is a baseline product anybody should have. This allows you connectivity into monitoring software. You can monitor this with any software package. You can monitor these PDUs, and they tie in with any third-party monitoring software. So if it's Sunbird or Schneider or anybody, they can pull these devices and pull data out of them. Stepping up to the switch PDU. So switch PDU, this is the category that Eaton actually abandoned several years ago, and we chose to just focus on managed, and an area that Triplet really focused on, being competitive in particular against APC. So very strong portfolio of switch PDU. This adds the capability to individually switch on and off outlets. So you can reboot a server if it's locked up. You can turn outlets off if you're not using them. So if people plug stuff in, they're not using power they shouldn't use. After a power outage, you can sequence power back on, so everything doesn't come on and start at the same time and start tripping circuit breakers. And there was actually a story at a Wells Fargo data center. They lost power on their data center, and then when power came back, everything turned on at the same time. All the circuit breakers tripped. They turned them all back on. They tripped again. They were fighting it for like 4 hours until they figured out what was going on, but it was too big of a load coming on at the same time. So there's value in understanding when things like power sequencing can help. On top of that, you can also do all your previous things like monitoring current draw, monitor power, monitor voltage. That can tell you how much capacity is left inside your PDU to plug in more things. This is really ideal for really any customer. So we see people who deploy these, like imagine a bank who has locations all over the country, and every bank or convenience store is going to have like a little IT rack in the back, maybe a little wall mount enclosure from the Craig's wall mount enclosure sit back there. And they're going to want to switch PDU in there so they can turn a server on and off, because what are you going to do? Call the bank teller and say, go unplug, server one, or ask the clerk at the gas station to go start rebooting servers or something. So these locations don't have any sort of IT staff. They don't want to have to pay people to go out there, so that remote management is very valuable to them. But increasingly, even in large data centers, we're seeing that this is important to them too, because even though they could physically go out in the data center and reboot something, why should they have to go inside their data center somewhere to do something that they could do from their desk or from home if they're not even at work? So really, it comes down, there's a real great cost justification here for these products. They cost more, but they save time, therefore they save money. And in a world we live in where resources are constrained, employees are hard to find, people are being asked to do more, saving time is like gold, right? So it should be a pretty easy sell to at least a switch PDU. Metered outlet technology, this is kind of an interesting one. When we first came to market with this, we targeted it at the financial industry, where we saw a lot of people who were concerned with the idea of outlet switching because they thought somebody could hack into their network or maliciously turn outlets off and shut down their data center, and they'd lose millions of dollars in trading revenue or whatever their concern was. And an interesting shift in that, I think, is partly that the technology has matured, but it's also very reliable and secure. And so people have really moved away from being a fear of switching. And so we see less of the metered outlet, but we still have certain customers, a couple of those financials actually that I mentioned that were on my chart earlier, who want the metered outlet. And so what they want is the capability to measure what every server or device is drawing. So you can take a look and you can say, okay, I deployed these servers, and in this application they're drawing this amount of power. You can understand at granularity what everything is consuming. You can also know that things are plugged in and operational because you can see that they're powered up. And so they like that granularity, but they don't want the risk of switching. So this product line merely exists just for people who don't want switching. Otherwise, they would just buy our managed product. And we have a very limited standard offering. This is mostly now just a configurable product for our flagship HD platform. So you can configure different options. So we don't stock a lot of this, but honestly, when people want it, it's a longer sales cycle, so it's really not a problem. They'll have time to order it and get it and everything. That picture there is actually, I guess it doesn't look, it's hard to see probably on the screen there, but that's actually a rack within our Eaton data center. So our Eaton data center in Kentucky, we have twin data centers there. They use a metered outlet PDU there. Moving up to managed. So managed is, and other manufacturers will call it outlet switching plus outlet metering. We latched onto the term managed, which for us means it's that. So you can switch the outlet, you can monitor down to the outlet level. This what I'm showing here is our Eaton G3 portfolio. We decided back in 2014 to go all in on managed, and we abandoned our switch products. And the reason we did that is when we go head to head with APC or other people in the market, we say, okay, your switch product is comparable in price to our managed product, but we have the added feature of outlet level metering. So we use that as a differentiator to help close deals and to sell the benefit of that. And the thought was it puts our competitors at a disadvantage, because when people use and like that feature, then they're not going to want to go back to switched. So we haven't sold switched for 8 years now. We haven't sold switched PDU within Eaton. There's a lot of benefits there. A lot of people like to use it to analyze power draw within their rack to understand exactly what everything is consuming. You can use it for calculating PUE to level 3 PUE calculations. Another nice thing is you can set low current thresholds, so you can tell if a power supply stops drawing power. It means the power supply was unplugged or turned off, so it kind of can give you an alert that there's something wrong. The other thing is, as we get in with our management software, we're looking at doing things with our management software to leverage that for advanced features like auto detection of devices on your network and things. So we're looking to take this to the next level and really leverage that feature for a kind of more of a winning software hardware combination, and hopefully more to come on that in the coming months. It's not quite ready for prime time yet. So the kind of getting here, I'm going to dwell here a little longer because I honestly think this product is if you come away with something from this presentation, I want you to come away with an understanding of this product line and why it's important. So our HT platform is our flagship rack PDU today. The first thing I want to be clear about is that it is configurable. It's not custom. Kind of like when Craig was talking earlier about stocking all the parts and being able to configure something. It's you have all these building blocks, and within those building blocks you can put them together different ways. You can make something. But if custom is when you're making something truly new that doesn't involve the building blocks, right? So the reason that that's important is it affects lead time. It also affects customer perception. There's some customers, when you say custom, they go like this right away because people bought custom stuff and they've had a bit of a bad experience with it, right? So we want to make sure people understand that it's configuration. So there's set parameters. We kind of have building blocks. You can put them together. You can do certain things. This platform probably is capable of theoretically 100,000 different combinations. Which when you tell management that, their heads explode. They say, "Kill that product line. It's evil. I never want to." Know anything about it again. But the reality is, even though there's 100,000 possible combinations, we sell maybe at most like 100 within a given year. So even though it's possible to make a configuration, it doesn't mean it's a valid configuration that somebody would order. Like for example, look at all the different colors. We can make that chassis. And to be quite honest, we don't sell a lot of purple or brown PDU. Although we have sold brown PDU, which is, some people think it's kind of weird, but we have sold brown PDU. So color-coded chassis is one of the things that people really like about this platform. So you can do like a red and blue PDU for an A and B feed, black and white, white and blue. So those are kind of the winning color combinations. The other colors, we've had college universities want them to be team colors because the president of the university knows nothing about technology, but show them colored PDUs and they start drooling, thinking it's the greatest thing ever, right? So sometimes we do things for reasons other than logic, I guess. So power cable length is a popular thing. 3 foot, 6 foot, 10 foot, 15 foot, different lengths depending on where you're trying to get. So it can kind of fill in different applications there. There's 28 different plug types. We don't sell all 28 of those. But the nice thing here is that when you get outside of those plain vanilla plugs that we sell all day long into some kind of more obscure plugs, like say single phase 50 amp, there's people who use that, and we have an option to fill that need, right? It may not be in stock, it may not be the cheapest option in the world, but if they need it, we have it. ABC doesn't, and other people don't do it. So this gives us just a tool in our toolkit to kind of adapt. And then circuit protection adoptions when you get into fault currents. Some of these really high power applications, there's concerns with arc flash and high fault currents. You get engineers at facilities doing studies. They start raising concerns. You've got options. When you hear high fault current, you've got an option within this product line to deal with that, and really nobody else out there does. So that's a powerful. That's an obscure, one of those obscure things, but very powerful when it's needed. Just to get into the platform itself, and some of this stuff, you're probably familiar with it, but high operating temperatures. So these PDU are sitting in the hot side of the rack where hot air is blowing on them. They're fully UL tested for 140 degrees Fahrenheit, full operating range. So they'll hold up under warranty, full warranty period at high temperatures. The Eaton PDU products have a 3-year warranty. And that's an advanced replacement warranty. So something goes wrong, we send you a new PDU, you send an old PDU back. Really no question asked type of warranty, so it is excellent. When we first offered that, nobody else was offering 3 years, and I think agency might not now. I think a couple people had actually offered it over the last couple of years, so it was leading, industry leading at the time. Low form factor. So if you look at the depth of our PDU, it's lower than Raritan and Servotech. So they're kind of considered the flagship product. We have a lower depth than they do, so that's something. It may only be a quarter of an inch, but when you're fighting for space in that rack, a quarter of an inch can mean the difference between a fan or a power supply sliding in and out or not sliding in and out. So it can be a big deal. Easy installation. They all use toolless mounting. I think this is pretty standard with all the triplet stuff is similar, right? Where you can just put it in the toolless mounting slot. So it fits right, compatible with all of our different rack offerings. So the network card, some features here. One of the things we do is daisy chain. So you can take one PDU and you can daisy chain up to 8 of them off of one IP address and network connection. Some people like this because it consolidates network ports. You can also do something kind of cool, which is you can do reboot across multiple PDUs. So if you have an A and a B PDU in the rack, you can team together outlets, and so like your server has 2 power supplies, right? If you turn out one of the power supplies, it'll just keep running. So you have to actually turn off both of them to be able to shut the server down. So we can team them together and we can manage them as a single device versus as an outlet. So that requires the daisy chain connection to do that. Hot swap network module. So that network module, just a couple of tools. You just squeeze aside and pull it out, put the new one in. You can swap that out. You don't lose power to anything. So like on a switch PDU, all the outlets stay on. Nothing reboots or anything. So it's truly all touch safe on the backside. If something does happen with that network card, it's very easy to service the PDU. High accuracy on the meter. This is getting more standard. It used to be something that Raritan really hammered with people because, to be quite honest, I've seen meters out there that are plus or minus 5% accuracy. That's a pretty big swag when it says 15 amps on the PDU and you're drawing 10 amps or 12 amps or something, right? So that is important to have accuracy. And then all of the Eaton branded stuff has the LCD display, and I think a lot of the trip light stuff does too, where you can do more than just read your current. You can set IP address. You can do a lot of configuration stuff through that screen. So, in a perfect world, you're not really ever doing much locally on a network PDU, but when you're provisioning or troubleshooting, it sure is nice to have that local touch to it. As far as what we can configure on here, I mentioned before the colors, so we have 11 different colors that we can configure on the PDU, and so that's the color chassis, and the LCD display bezel has a color coding on it. That's a perfect connection with the power cables. So I always tell people, don't only get the PDU color coded, make sure you're getting matching color power cables. So when you have your red cable going from server to your red PDU, blue to blue, if you look at the server, you can see it's got dual sources. You can trace that back. And if you have something plugged in wrong, like a red cable plugged into a blue PDU, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So it kind of eliminates any risk of misconnecting a device to power feeds. That's why people like it. Configurable outlet modules, so we have 16 different outlet modules that are in 3 different lengths, and you can configure up to 54 outlets. So you can mix and match those modules a lot of different ways to get every outlet combination imaginable. So it's really flexible. Something that's become a popular feature that I know Raritan and ServerTech have led with is alternating phase outlets. So where normally in a PDU you've got banks of outlets that are off like a circuit breaker or off in phase, we have alternating as it goes up the PDU. So when you plug it, so a lot of times what happens in a data center, if you don't get instructions on how to plug stuff in, is they just start at the top and they just start plugging stuff in. And when you have sections, before you know it, the first section has everything plugged into it, the other 2 sections have nothing plugged in. And then circuit breakers trip and you have all sorts of problems, unbalanced phases, etc. So this kind of makes it easy to always find an outlet and to get your plug stuff in. This feature alone has sold tons of product. I mean, people just love it. Selectable input cords, I talked a little bit about that, and the circuit protection options. So that's another thing you can configure. So within this platform, on the far left there where it says 2 outlet module, that is the configurable HD platform. And so that's where you can configure 2 outlet modules, so your choice of your 2 modules, and then all the other options I talked about. And that's the only one that's configurable. The other 2 to the right of that use the same HD modules, but they're fixed models. So there's just kind of fixed configurations that we have available. So the reason we have the other options is basically the power capacity. So the standard HD platform can go up to 22 kW, which any of you who've done a lot of data center work know that that's a pretty high power rack, right? So that covers, say, 90% of the market out there. But what we're starting to see now is a trend towards these higher density racks where people need even more power going into the rack. And so we have 3 outlet modules go up to 35 kW, and a brand new product we just launched end of last year that can go up to 46 kW that has more outlet modules, but also more circuit breakers, which is kind of critical because you have to add more branch circuit breakers to get more power out. So you can't just put more power in without more branches coming out. So it goes from 3, 6, 9, 12 breaker options, and kind of gives you a flavor. A lot of what I'm talking about here is mostly 3-phase. You can also configure HD in single phase 30 amp, but or single phase 50 or single phase 60, but it's mostly 3-phase because this is more of a data center focused type product. So where to configure? If you go to eaton.com/h/HD, there's lots of marketing collateral up there, probably a video and some other kind of ways you can find out more about the product. And then there's a link where you can click into the configurator. And this is actually the configurator, and you can see Those gray boxes there, like it says technology, input, port type. When you click on those, you can get a drop-down box where you can select your option. This is an intelligent configurator, so if you can start with any option you want, but if you pick a certain option, it will remove options that are invalid, which is good, right? I mean, people sometimes say, can I just get a selection chart of all the options and I'll just pick my own part number? And I tell them, no, we're never going to do that because you're going to pick a bad combination because that's what people do, right? So this lets you, it filters your combinations, gives you only valid combinations. So the one caveat I throw out there is if the outlet modules, if you're not seeing what you want, try flip-flopping your choices back and forth because sometimes an outlet module has to sit in a certain position, and that'll help you. And you can see when you configure it in that green box there, it gives you a description of the PDU, the physical size of the PDU, gives you a little picture on the bottom of kind of what it'll look like. It's not exactly, so it kind of gives you a nice little cut sheet of what what you can expect. All right, switching gears, automatic transfer switches. So automatic transfer switches are one of those product categories that have kind of hung around for many years. They were really originally created to give dual power to devices that don't have dual power. So think about like back in the old days when people had like telephone systems in office buildings. The telephone systems were 120 volt single corded devices, but they're technically IT devices and they need power redundancy. So people wanted to plug them into ATSs. Or maybe there's some little modem box or something that you got for your internet connection that needs dual sources, but it only has a single cord. So one of the primary functions of, really the primary function of an ATS is getting that dual cord redundancy to devices that don't have it. So I always tell people if your server has two power supplies on it, don't plug it into an ATS. You basically took dual source redundancy, plugged it into something with dual source redundancy, and you created a single point of failure, potentially by doing that. So if you have dual cords, you don't need this product. This is for other applications. The other time we've seen people want it is when they want a dual UPS and they put the ATS between the UPSs. So those are, I would say, the two primary use cases for this type of product. This is a category that on the Eaton side, we always wanted to expand the product category and offer more models, but to be quite honest, we didn't have enough sales to justify the investment. So when we acquired Triplite, I was very excited to see, I knew Triplite had a nice portfolio. So this is probably the biggest win, in my opinion, on the acquisition is a really robust ATS portfolio that we get without having to, go through all the development on it. So Eaton has maybe three main ATS models. They're going to probably live for a while, but if that doesn't fill the need, the Triplite, look at the Triplite portfolio because it's by far much stronger. And so yeah, Triplite, 27 options. I think that includes the 3 from Eaton and mostly Triplite models. Something that Triplite has that Eaton doesn't have is advanced technologies like switching within the ATS. So Eaton would have an ATS or a managed product. And we said, if you want to switch out, let's just buy both of them and plug them together. Well, that can be a considerable investment, right, versus buying something that has switching built in. So this is a great niche that Triplite has a strong offering in. So that would be for somebody who wants, wants the capability of switching. Maybe they have single port devices, and this is a perfect product for something like that. Most of these ATSs are network connected. That's kind of the nature of the product. You want to monitor to see if you lose, your A or your B feed. It's not on here, but they have ultra fast switching times, so we're talking milliseconds. So they should hold up, so the power supply theoretically shouldn't go down. Usually if power supplies have trouble with the transfer, it's because the power supply is not a very robust power supply. So they're meant to keep the power supply up and running. And then they have a default A and a B source, so you can see they're an A and a B feed. And they're set to one or the other being primary. So if A and B are present, maybe it's set that A is primary or B is primary. So if they're both there, it always has a preference on which one it's supposed to be at. So just know that, and then when power is restored, it'll come back. Maintenance bypass PDU, MVP. So really, this was developed as a way to be able to switch out UPS to do two things really. To be able to distribute power from a UPS, but also to be able to switch out a UPS without having to lose power to your load. And so this is a manual transfer switch, not an automatic transfer switch. And you can see that, kind of see that little switch on the front there. You flip it, You flip it over to utility, and it basically switches power to utility feed. So one plugs in utility being your wall outlet, the other one plugs in UPS. You switch it over, swap out your UPS, you're back up and running. So this is another area I think Triplite had more of an offering. These are used with the lower power UPSs in particular. This is a nice add-on sale for UPS. And there are actually MEPs that are higher power rated too. So this is something when you're speccing a UPS, you want to talk about maintenance bypass as part of that solution. All right, so I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek of what we've got coming in 2023. So I was talking with Dan this morning at breakfast about when we did our last DataCon training for Eaton pre-COVID. I remember talking, there was discussion about the new network card, the new products we were all excited about, and then COVID hit, chip shortages hit, everything hit banned, right? And so things got delayed and changed, and a lot of stuff's happened since then. But I'm excited to say that we're finally at a point in the development cycle where we have real products that we're testing that are getting ready to come to market. So we're going to have some major product launches coming in 2023. And the goal, future simplified, I just threw that term out there because I view these products as simplifying the PDU range. We have a lot of models, a lot of technologies, a lot of different output counts, plug types, etc. So we have some ways we think we can simplify how you select power. So the first thing that's coming up on deck in January is going to be our new universal power input PDU. I'll call it the Swiss Army knife of PDU. So what's unique about this, you see that little connector on the end of the PDU. That's actually a company called Sario, which Eaton acquired, makes this circular connector. And this is actually a connector, like a twist-on connector, where you can attach a power cable. And so the power cable is separate from the PDU. So I'm sure you're all familiar with like a C19, C20, right? So like a low power connector, you can use different power cords on it. So this is the same concept, but bringing it to high power. And when I say high power, I'm talking like 5 kW up to 23 kW. So we can do really high power configurations through this. And so this one inlet will accept different power cords. So your customer can buy one PDU. Let's use a co-location data center, for example. Maybe they might deploy 5 kW, 8.6 kW, 17.3 kW power profiles in their data center. They can buy one PDU, 3 different cords, and depending on where they deploy that rack, they just plug it in with a different cord. And maybe a global customer who's deploying PDU in the US and Europe. Europe, they're using 415, 240 volt 3-phase. Here, they're using 208 volt 60 amp 3-phase. Same PDU, 2 different ports. Global approvals, they can just deploy it, the same PDU globally. We've had a lot of large global customers coming to us and talking to us about this interest in one part number. They're like, I just want one part number. And as everybody who's involved in power knows, power is different around the world, right? So one part number is now as easy as it sounds. So we've done some clever stuff to be able to address that in this product. The other thing we've done is it's going to have 42 outlets with a mixture of C13 and our new C39 outlet. So our C39 outlet we first launched in our HD product line, and hopefully you're all familiar with that, but that's basically a combination of a C13 and a C19. So you can plug either a C20 or a C14 into the same outlet. So kind of think of it like a 520 outlet, a T-blade outlet where you can do 15 or 20 amp plugs. And so what that allows us to do is this PDU has 24 plus 18, so you could effectively have the equivalent of 42 C13 or 24 C13 and 18 C19 on the PDU. And so that makes it very versatile when you go to deploy it. As everybody knows, when you deploy things in a data center, sometimes within the power profile, maybe the network has different network switches have different requirements than the servers, or maybe in the future they don't know how things are going to change between blades and one-use servers. So having that flexibility is kind of like that future-proof, and it just makes you know that if you're buying this PDU, you won't have to worry about what comes along later. So as I said, 5 kilowatt or kVA single phase, that would be like an L630 plug, all the way up through 23 kVA 3-phase. So 415, 240 volt, 32 amp, 3-phase power in this PDU. Hot swappable G3 network card. So what we're launching first in January has our existing G3 network card, doing that in the interest of speed to market. But keep in mind that slot would be upgradable to future network cards. So that's a hot swap slot, but also upgradable. So a different card in the future could go in that slot. Managed technology, so this is the flagship technology, outlet switching, outlet metered. So this PDU can do everything. And the pricing on this is going to be positioned such that it's positioned against a switch PDU. So if you're going head-to-head on a switched opportunity, you have that extra value, but your price delta isn't really there. And it'll be stocked for quick ship. Could have stopped. I should just stop there, right? Stocked for quick ship. So the magic happens in the power cord. So I don't know if any of you caught on that wide range of power and different power types covered: single phase, three-phase delta, three-phase Y. Anyone here with an electrical background would all say, how can you do something like that? That's completely amazing. And the secret sauce is in the power cord. So essentially what the PDU sees is it sees 6 single-phase circuits, and it's wired inside that plug back shell. We make connections differently, and how we make those connections on the cord determines how the power goes into the PDU. And so basically by buying the cord, you're selecting how the power is wired in. And then there's some circuitry inside the PDU that kind of looks at the voltages and says, I think that this is delta, I think this is Y, and figures out what kind of power source has been plugged in. So at launch, these are the power cables that are available. I would call these the kind of the sweet spot type power cords. L630, L2130, 332P6W is really popular in Europe. That's basically their equivalent of the L630. 516 P6W, also European popular, but could be used here in the US. The 460 P9W, that's 208 volt, 3-phase, 60 amp, which is really popular in data centers. The pigtail plug, that's just wires. You can wire it right into a conduit junction box. So you got people who insist that they have hardwired stuff. That's a way that they can hardwire in. And then the 532P6W, probably the most common plug now in US data centers, even though it's a European voltage. We've seen a real shift towards 415, 240 volt data centers. And then the 560P6W, which is the 16 amp equivalent, but throttled down to 32 amps because of the number of surge breakers in the PDU. There's more cables that are on the future list, so there will probably be more stuff coming. This is kind of a launch offering.
Do we have IP around that, Joe?
No, no. So there's another vendor that has universal PDU, but unfortunately they haven't been able to ship it for 8 months. So there's Vertiv has an offering, and actually they actually use the Eaton connector on it, so it's a similar concept. So then kind of looking forward, our G4, so those who are familiar with the Eaton product line know that we have this G3 moniker. That was basically to differentiate when we launched our new platform in 2014 from previous generations. So we said, hey, we need to identify this as G3. And that's been our platform for a number of years. So now it's moved to G4. Think of this really, more than anything, as the network card, although there's other models and other things that are wrapped around it. But really the network card is the huge differentiator and all the features that come along with that. So really look at this product line as a really clean product line. It's always bothered me in metered and managed and switched, even within triplet. Look at the product line. You'll find like a metered product that has 42 outlets, and then you go to an equivalent switch product and it's got 24 outlets. And so it's like, just because someone changes technologies doesn't mean they need less outlets, right? And the reason we've always done that is because the technology in a switch product or managed product takes up more space, so it gets harder to fit the outlets in. So there was a lot of really smart people working on this product who came up with great ways to pack a lot of stuff into a tiny box. So we were able to get fully managed, and then also, so we basically pair up the managed and metered. So you can get this the same 24C13, 18C19, metered or managed. It's going to be the same physical size. So if your customer wants to move up or down in technology, it's the same physical size box, fits in the same opening, same number of outlets. So it just makes it easier to move between technologies. Also doing smart part numbering, that's crazy small up there, but it basically builds out different options. So, first option, Eaton, second, vertical. So, future horizontal stuff can have a code in there. Next one, MA for managed, MI for metered, so your technology's coded in. Your plugs all have a code. L1530 is 1530, L2130 is 2130. So with a little bit of kind of understanding of stuff, right, you can really decode these part numbers quickly. Outlet counts, if it's X, it's 42 outlets. If it's A, it's 24 outlets. So X, think extreme outlet count, 42, and if it's A, think the shortest letter in the alphabet, 24 outlets. And then if there's no number at the end, it's 10-foot cord, and and if there's a number, it's a 6-foot cord, or whatever the number is of the cord. So meant to be very intuitive and easy to sell with the product line, because we recognize the fact that as reps, you're selling not just PDU, you're selling all these other product lines. And I learned years ago in this business, the easier you make things for people, the more likely they are to sell it. If you make it hard, they don't waste their time on it. It's human nature, right? So the goal here is to make things easy. These are all the model numbers. At kind of a quick high level, July is going to be the higher outlet count. November is mostly going to be lower, the 24 outlet. The 24 outlet offering is more limited, and that's just to offer a smaller and lower cost alternative in very popular plug types. Some of the plug types are omitted there just because they're not as high runners. And so this is going to really become the main offering, the main Eaton and Eaton triplet offering in the future that we're going to have available. July, same time. Along with this is the new network card. So I put a special slide just to talk about the network card. This network card probably is going to have a whole presentation just talking about the network card, because there's a lot of stuff that's going to be packed into this thing. But at a high level, what you need to know is it's going to, first of all, it's going to marry up with the UPS network card. So you probably heard people talking earlier about this great cybersecurity improved network card. And as our marketing teams attack the cybersecurity message, I cringe every time, because they're like, hey, our UPS card is cyber secure, and our PDU card isn't. It's like, it kind of like it was a counter message, right? So finally we're getting the same technology packed into the UPS card. So it's also going to unite the platform itself. So the look and the feel is going to be synergistic between the Eaton PDU and the Eaton UPS, and it's a very modern and intuitive interface. It's amazing. The team's done great work on it. It's actually tested by UL. Eaton cybersecurity team, even with our existing firmware, every firmware release goes through cybersecurity review and testing. They're extremely stringent with things, and this is something I've hammered home with customers, and it actually resonates quite a bit. And until you start talking about it, people don't realize that they're just buying these products from people without even knowing what cybersecurity measures are being implemented on devices. And our competitors aren't doing anywhere near what we're doing. A few years ago, we had a team of lawyers who decided cybersecurity is a threat for Eaton, right, for our welfare as a large corporation. They put together this team to make sure we're putting out products that are secure and safe, and we're alerting people when things go wrong and doing all the right things. So if something happens, we don't want to be that next company in the headlines. So that's where all that focus is. So a lot of really cool stuff with cybersecurity. Dual gigabit network ports. So gigabit network ports are something that's been missing on the Eaton side. Triplight's had that in their portfolio for a while. We're going to have dual gigabit ports, so you can actually connect to two physically separate networks. So co-location data centers sometimes like this, because they can have their customer and them connected to the same PDU, and they can both monitor the same PDU. We can also use that for daisy chaining, so we can daisy chain multiple devices, 32 devices off of one network port. Fault tolerant daisy chain, so we'll have a backward chain to get redundancy, power redundancy on the daisy chain, so if you lose power to one of the PDU, the other PDU will have power still. And no power commissioning through NFC. We're going to have a lot more to come on that, but basically the idea is you can use near field communication. So your telephone, you can hold it close to it, you can configure the PDU just by holding your device close to it. And the network card is going to be in our G4 offering. It's going to be worked backwards into our HD offering. So over time, we will work it in to our to existing models, and eventually end of life that G3 network card. On to tools and questions. Selection tools. I'll just mirror what everyone else said. I think everyone in Eaton is very excited about the Triplet website. Great product selection tool. So that tool's out there. You can't check prices on PDU, just so you guys know. That's not an option on the PDU side of things. But on the Eaton side, unfortunately, we're still segregated into kind of three different selectors. Okay, so on the Eaton side, we have the Rack PDU selector, and we have the Rack PDU configurator. What's that? Ken.
I wish.
Okay, well, all right, I only have 2 more slides. I thought there was one. I thought everybody finished early, so I thought I got extra time. Aren't I allowed to use that? I thought that was like bonus time. I guess. I was saying I got the best slot of the day. Normally I'm like right after lunch or right before drinks at the end of the day. I got put right in that sweet spot. So I'm just thankful for what I have. So I'll wrap things up. So just something else. This is literally my last slide. So just I wanted to throw this in here because it's kind of a tangent in with this same kind of data center market. Is we are looking at expanding products for the open compute market space. So open compute, for those of you who aren't familiar, is kind of a new power topology where power is distributed through a centralized power supply called a power shelf and a bus bar in the back of the rack. And I've worked with Craig on some new racks that he's bringing to market that we're going to offer a solution with the power shelf, the bus bar. And so this is going to be for people who want to adopt open compute, who are not like the large Facebooks of the world, but people who want to adopt the same architecture, and the idea is Eaton's going to have solutions. So just be aware if people talk about open compute. Really all you need to know is reach out, and we'll have a landing page, eaton.com/OCP, but from there, reach out to me about it. I'm spearheading an effort on this, and we can talk about what our options are. We're going to be displaying at the Open Compute Summit in San Jose in October. We're going to have a booth there, Eaton's first booth, and it's kind of exciting because there's a lot of like industry-leading thinkers who are going to be at the show. So we're going to chance to talk about not only this, but all the other great stuff that Eaton's doing. So should be a good opportunity to generate some opportunity. And that was it. So.